Hey, this is Steve Halleck of TickTocking, and I'm finally doing another podcast. Man, I've been having a baby, moving. You can see I'm in a new office. I got bookshelves behind me. They're pretty empty right now. But, a lot going on. It's hard to get a moment to just check in and record a podcast here. But finally, I got 10 minutes, so I figured we would talk about this Only Watch auction that just happened. Boy, we had a lot go on in one charity auction. We had the most expensive watch ever sold. We had a bunch of independent watches do really, really well. So there's a decent amount to unpack here. I guess, should we just start with the Patek? This is the obvious place to start. For those who don't know, Patek made a unique version of their Grandmaster chime, which is a horribly ugly watch that is very complicated, and every year they do a piece for Only Watch, and of course it's the most expensive lot generally because Patek is Patek, and in this case they did one of their most expensive or their most expensive and most complicated watch and made it unique, so everybody knew that it was going to go for a lot of money, but 31 million Swiss is pretty insane. I don't really know where to even begin with this. Like I just said, I think it's a really ugly watch. It is I don't know, it doesn't represent anything kind of good for me. It's like, it could be a Christophe Claret. It could be like I don't even think of Patek necessarily as being this kind of grand complications house. For me, I'd rather a classic minute repeater or almost anything else they make in a different case with different dials, and I don't know. It's not a nice watch to me. This isn't it's not a cool look, I don't think, for the horological community. Whenever a new world record is set, it makes all sorts of mainstream press, and it's a big deal, right? And for a lot of people, this is all they're ever gonna read about our hobby. And I just don't think it's like a great look, like that watch is, it's just very clearly for a type of person that I know I don't even know. I doubt many of the people watching this channel know that person. It's not generally like appealing. And so I thought, when it was the Paul Newman Daytona and that was the story, at least that's kind of cool and cute, and Paul Newman's such an amazing guy. And, it's got multi-level appeal, and ultimately it's cool that it's a Daytona, and a Daytona really is kind of should be a $10,000 watch. Now, maybe they're $13,000 or $20,000 watch, but it's somewhat approachable, and it's kind of cool that this is the one that was 17 million bucks or whatever it was. But a grand complication Patek in an ugly case with an ugly dial that is 31 million Swiss francs and just like isn't gonna connect with really anybody. I don't know. It is what it is. It's just totally not what I'm interested in. It's like there's sometimes I think this hobby needs to be broken into categories, and I try to stay in my little sandbox, which is these independent watchmakers that I love, and occasionally into some other cool stuff. But that particular world is just totally foreign to me and not my interest at all. So I'll leave that alone for now. Let's talk about the Indies, because this was the other part of the sale that was pretty awesome. It's not uncommon to get a unique watch from an independent maker, especially kind of early on in the brand's lives. Most of these guys start by making sort of, a one-off here and there. So, in my personal collection, I've got a very early one-off Kari Voutilainen, and you guys may have seen recently my recent YouTube or on Instagram the kind of one-off Akrivia tourbillon that I've got. I've sold several one-off Gronfeld 1941s in the last year or two. And so to see, but usually they kind of come and go. You know, the watchmaker makes them for a collector and that guy just owns them. Maybe they sell them to me and I sell them to one other person, but there's no real like PR machine that goes on it. So Only Watch is cool because it's the one time where this unique piece gets really like PR'd like crazy for a while, and it happens to be for a good cause. But I think it just goes to show you that there is a really big market for the really good Indy watches. And of course, I've built an entire business on this, so I'm familiar with this, but not often does the world get to see that, you know, a lot of people think, well, I really want an Acrivia, but who's gonna buy it if I don't want it? Or, you know, am I the only guy in the world that wants to buy this watch? So instead I'm gonna buy whatever, a Patek, whatever. And so I think they end up with a less interesting product and purchase. But I think this goes to show this auction, you know, for a watch to achieve a certain price in an auction, there has to be at least 2 bidders of that level. And so when you see a time-only Acrivia sell for 360,000 Swiss, you know there were several bids up to that level. There are a lot of layered people who are paying attention and recognizing the level of watchmaking here. And so just going over a couple lots, I thought the Gronfeld was the steal of the night. And I happen to know the buyer and I'm glad that he bought it. I would have rather he bought one from me, but if he needs to buy one, this was a really cool one. And I think it's tough being the first lot of the evening. But still, 70,000 Swiss is considerably over the retail price generally. You know, obviously this is unique, so wherever they would price it, but this was a nice price for everybody. It was nice to own it there, but also nice for the company, good for everything, and it was a really nice execution of the watch. The Moser did really well. Perpetual Moon went for 48,000 Swiss, and I think it was a cool watch. Like that's another one that I would like to wear. What they do with the Vanta Black is really awesome, and those watches just look great in person. Let's see, scrolling through here. The Journe, obviously 1.8 million Swiss for a Journe. Now, this was a very complicated, pretty amazing horologically watch, but 1.8 million Swiss for a Journe, that's a big deal. That's an independent watch that just sold for 1.8 million Swiss. So this is, I think, huge when you really unpack these results. There's several of them that happened in one auction that's going to go by quickly, and so we're going to forget. But this is a big deal. And you keep going, and you just see every good watch just killed it. Like the Konstantin Chaikin Joker, 70,000 Swiss. You know, these are like a 10,000, I think, or 12,000 retail watch. So you're talking 6 or 7x on retail on that one. The De Bethune and Urwerk combo was probably the most unique. I mean, this was one where there's no like analogous similar watch that you can buy. God, I hope they make one in the future because I want it badly. I would have bid on this, but I knew a few people that were bidding, and they were bidding more than I could pay for it. But again, 300,000 Swiss on this one. That's a really nice price. Because you basically have, you know, for either De Bethune or Urwerk to reach 300,000 Swiss in an auction would be a big deal. So this is both of them at once. You have the MB&F clock at 85,000 Swiss, like amazing. It was a super cool clock. I would love to have that on my shelf right here with little bad Sherman up there. But man, 85,000 Swiss is a pretty nice result for a clock. I'm sure Max is happy with that. Keeping going through here, I mean, I'm not mentioning everybody. I'm not into every brand and whatever, but everybody that I like did really well. You have the Anderson Geneve. I mean, Sven Anderson is like as Indy as it gets, right? This is a guy who's an amazing watchmaker, but almost nobody knows him. He does no PR. Nobody pays any attention. And his watch goes for 70,000 Swiss. And then you have the Kari pocket watch. Now this is it's a weird thing, right? It's a pocket watch. Pocket watches aren't necessarily easy to sell. And you talk about a Kari Von Nuit right now, they're in the maybe mid 70s or something range. The estimate was 50 to 70 on this, and this one went for 110 Swiss. So really amazing there. And then the Acrivia was the huge hit, 360,000 Swiss for a watch that in its normal guise, I think retails for about 60,000. And it was obvious they just knocked it out of the park. It was just a beautiful watch. Plus the normal version has a very long wait list, so it's not like you can just buy even the normal one. But they just killed it with the dial and the case using Mr. Hogman, who now has been brought into the manufacturer in some way, which is also brilliant. But the watch just ticked all the boxes. I know everybody that I know was interested in this watch. But still, even with that, 360,000 Swiss, that's a big time result for a brand that is not particularly established at this point. They're definitely in the major rising star category, especially now. And it made me happy to own the Tourbillon that I own, which I think will go down as being a very, very special watch. Anyway, I think that this is a commentary on a few things. First of all, information is getting more and more readily accessible. And so it used to be pretty hard for your everyday collector to find indies. You'd have to really dig. But even with their low PR, almost no advertising, whatever, people just use the internet and they look around and they find maybe, God, I hope it's my YouTube channel or, whatever the outlet is that talks about watches. And it's getting a little bit easier to find these guys. And I think that the world is going towards consumers really looking for what is the value in their purchase. And I think that that independent watchmaking really lines up with those values. I mean, these are the guys that are really actually putting their heart and soul into stuff versus Patek with their grand chime. Oof, shots fired on Patek. So I don't mean to be so hard. I love, Patek's Patek. Okay, fine. Don't shoot me, guys. Anyway, so I think that's some of it. It's easier for people to get into this area. It's more in line with the modern tastes of like people, especially, my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger. We're not as into supporting like the luxury brands or the big old Swiss brands. So the idea of a younger guy who's a really go-getter entrepreneur and trying to make an actual amazing handmade product, I think fits with the modern consumer ethos really well. And I think that more and more we're going to see other companies have driven up the market. Richard Mille brought in a lot of guys. Now the Nautilus and Royal Oak and Steel Sport watches in general are bringing a lot of people into the tent. There's more and more people coming into the horological tent. My almost none of my friends, like real life friends, are really into watches. And so they ask what I do, what I sell. They sort of immediately assume that I'm selling just to rappers and football players and whatever when they hear of a $300,000 watch or something. And I kind of explain to them that really my customer is mainly like a nerd, just a guy who, most people, they get on this mountain, this horological mountain, and most people stop at around base camp. Which is maybe Rolex or Breitling, or maybe move a little bit higher to Patek and Audemars Piguet and all these things. But for a certain amount of people, they want to actually find the summit. What is the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and those people find independent watchmaking. But it's work getting to the summit, and it's always been a certain percentage of people. And most people are not that kind of person. But let's say it's 1% of the people who are into watches. I think a lot more people now are starting to climb the mountain. And so the more people you get to the mountain, the more people are going to be interested in what's up there at the top. And I think this auction is a reflection of that. The cool thing as consumers is you don't have to wait for the only watch auction. You know, I've sold, like I said, I have bought, have sold, have whatever, some amazing pieces from Indies, both unique and not unique. I mean, it is ultimately on a planet of 8 billion people. What the heck difference does it make if there's one of something or if there's 11 or whatever? I mean, these guys make such low output that you're never going to wear a Kari Voutilainen in Von Wheat and run into another guy who has one on, let alone a guy who has one with the same dial and metal and whatever. Like it's an impossibility. Well, this is Judd coming from a guy who's run into another invention piece one in rose gold wearer, but that was Gary G and at a watch event, so I don't think it counts. Right, Gary? Anyway, you can get these Indies. They're reasonable for what they are, certainly compared to the competition. You can get really cool configurations, and they're watches that have really been proven out by the market time and time again. You know, my business is a little bit scary. I buy this stuff with my own money, and sometimes too, I can fall into the trap of like, ooh, this is so small. Who's gonna, you know, I bought this Akrivia Tourbillon a month ago. God, I know people kind of like this, but do people I really want to buy it with their own money and whatever. I put my money on the table, I buy the watch, and then, you know, a month later you see a time-only watch go for 360 grand at auction. So it's really, I think, reaffirming for those of us who are into this sort of stuff, which I assume most of my channel and podcast followers are. So I think we'll take this as a good win for the good guys here, even though some of the bad guys did well as well, or just the boring guys. So I guess that's good for everybody. All right, thanks guys. I'll see you soon.